Welcome to another episode of War Stories. My name, of course, is Ryan Smeltz, and I will tell you because of that MEPS episode turning into two episodes, I have thrown off my planning over here that I use as an outline to kind of stay on track and remember what I'm talking about. So maybe I should be more careful with that. However, if you didn't hear yesterday's episode, I arrived at the 43rd. I did get a little bit into the day two and kind of what it looked like. But I arrived at the 43rd and finally got to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. It would have been May 10th because May 9th is the date that I reported to MEPS, raised my right hand, and enlisted in the Army. So May 10th at 2 o'clock in the morning, I put my head down. Woke up 2 hours later, still at the 43rd, went downstairs, and I was talking about how you get your shoes checked. And basically, we got all the CIF gear, so the equipment draw, and got issued BDUs, so two tops and two bottoms of Summers, I mentioned yesterday, but at the time I did not know. So in my mind, I got four tops and four bottoms um, of BDUs, and then they had us sew on the patches, and I didn't have anyone standing next to me, and I wasn't really paying attention at this time. We had the uniform on, the boots were on, and so when I took my uniforms in to get the name tapes and the U.S. Army and everything sewn on, then obviously we took off one of the tops we were wearing and turned it in. And, as much as I like to think I'm pretty good at attention to detail, I also believe I learned most of that from the Army. Um, I got at least one uniform back without the United States flag on the shoulder. Um, and so at this point, I had no idea. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know that it wasn't there. And once again, at this stage, still, I don't know the difference between summers and winters. I just know we're not allowed to roll up the sleeves. That's all I know. So we get the uniforms. Essentially, I would say later in that afternoon, the bus pulls up, and they have us ready there with like two duffel bags and the laundry bag. Like I felt like I had so much stuff, and it might have been one duffel bag and a rucksack. I don't remember. I just remember we got on the bus, we left. Um, there's drill sergeants on this bus. You kind of hit the railroad tracks and everything changes. It's like when they first pick us up, they're like, "Oh, come on, get on the bus." And then I feel like going over the railroad tracks, things kind of changed. Um, I didn't realize at the time what was going on, but then when we arrived at the PT field or the parking lot across from the barracks, so if you were at Fort Leonard Wood or you went through training, you know that um, there were spaceships for 787. I was actually Foxtrot 787 when I got there and reported or whatever. My fill, the group of people I went with from the 43rd to basic training land were all Foxtrot 787. We were in the old building. So I wasn't in the spaceships. We didn't have these nice barracks, which in hindsight was kind of nice because when you learn to sweep and mop and buff the floors, if you had to strip the wax and re-wax the floors, whatever it was, it's like the drill sergeants could only expect a certain level of cleanliness as it relates to those old 1960s barracks or however old they were. In the spaceships, I feel like they're like, hey, it was brand new when we got here. You're gonna keep it brand new. So the tiniest little scuff mark or whatever, I felt like that just would have been a pain in the butt. However, like I said, I was in the old barracks, so we arrived at the parking lot there. Um, and just kind of going back to the 43rd, because I do definitely go over the shark attack, but I think that's probably going to be something for tomorrow's episode. But I found out a couple of things, and one of those things was apparently people would arrive in preparation for training at the 43rd Battalion, which is where all of the in processing was done, and they would be there for 2 weeks, and it would take them 2 weeks to go through. You know, we got in those lines where they gave you the shots, and I swear, going through that line, you just got roll up both your sleeves, and there's guys in there just going nuts with needles. It's like I got so many vaccinations, I couldn't tell you what they were at the time. It's like sign here, hold still, this is gonna suck, and then you just got a ton of needles in your arm. But both arms, just walking down like walking down an aisle, and just guys on both sides just sticking needles in your arms. And then that's also where they would, you might have glasses, and I think they took mine. If you had glasses, they took them and they measured them, and then they just gave you the classic BCGs, uh, which lined up with whatever your prescription was. But if you didn't have glasses, they would check your eyes, and maybe it was like, hey, do you need glasses? And you're like, no. And then they check your eyes, and they're like, no, you actually do need glasses. But everybody got the classic BCGs. When I went through, they were the old school brown, thick frames. I actually used to have a dummy pair. I wish I still had them. I would show them to you. But they were very, very large and bulky, and classically called BCGs for birth control glasses. Um, so obviously nobody even wants to talk to you if you have those things on. But uh, essentially, anybody who needed vision correction in basic training had those glasses. And I'm really just covering everything that we went through at the 43rd, because I thought it was interesting how I got to the 43rd at 2 o'clock one morning, and after 2 hours of sleep and all day at the 43rd, I was on a bus headed to basic training land that afternoon. So I tell everyone that I was there for 2 days, but really, arriving at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night and then leaving the next day, I was probably at the 43rd for less than 24 hours. Um, got everything done we were supposed to get done, got on the bus and went to basic training land, and that was pretty much it. So the people that had to spend 2 weeks there, number one, I'm a bit confused about that. I'm kind of curious why uh, why it took 2 weeks to get done what we knocked out in less than 24 hours. Which, granted, if you got there at a decent time and you got to go to bed at a decent time, then maybe you could draw it out to 2 days. I could definitely see that, but I just don't understand why it would take 2 weeks. What what part of that process they were drawing out or dragging their feet on. But then I also learned that there was something called PTRP, which I believe was physical therapy recovery program or something like that. That was right beside the 43rd, so that was another place. We also called that, the nickname was Pork Chop Unit. So if somebody went into training and just by the end of training couldn't pass their PT test, because maybe they're fat or slow or both, then they would go to that unit. And then also people who got injured during training, or hurt in one way or another, and if they missed major training events and needed the extra kind of physical therapy and recovery, they would go to that unit. And essentially, they spent all day in what we called the marshmallow. So the PTs that you got before you passed your phase 5 or phase 3 PT test, basically the official Army PT test, before you did the 2 mile run, 2 minutes push ups, 2 minutes of sit ups, and you passed, You wore the old school gray Army PTs, the sweatpants, sweatshirt, and that pork chop unit or PTRP. They just wore those all day, and I guess did 2 a days or 3 a days where they just exercised, which was kind of funny because I heard about guys going there and spending as much as 90 days to 6 months in that unit working to basically improve their PT so they could go back to training, at which point I'm like, why did it take that long? But those who were injured or had other setbacks, I could totally see it taking them a while to get through that. But 43rd, I spent less than 24 hours there, got on a bus, went to basic training land, and that's where we're going to talk about the shark attack the first day, and how I kind of got trained on how to be in training, and also the difference, which I think at the time I didn't realize, but the difference between what I went through, which was OSIT, and what everyone else went through depending on their MOS, which was essentially basic and AIT. So that's all on the next episode. Be sure to tune in. Once again, leave us a 5-star review. That definitely helps bump the podcast up. It helps get the word out. Helps tell these podcast platforms that this is something that you all actually want to listen to. If you enjoy this and you want to get notified of future episodes, be sure to subscribe. If you are on Facebook listening, or if you're watching the video on Facebook, if you go to our page on your cell phone, there's a tab at the top where it says about videos and then podcasts. If you tap on that tab, you can actually subscribe to the podcast on Facebook. So if you decide at one point you're driving, you can't watch the video and you just want to listen to it, you can listen to it on Facebook as a podcast. Works just like iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and everywhere else we are. So be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Tell your friends to subscribe as well. Join us on the next episode of War Stories. My name, of course, is Ryan Smeltz, and you all have a great